Welcome to Inspirational Leadership. I'm your host, Kristen Harcourt, and we have another amazing guest. My guest today is Lisa Lounsbury, who is a resilience and well-being expert, certified lifestyle wellness and menopause coach, and the founder of Noonday Wellness Incorporated. For more than 30 years, Lisa has been helping leaders and organizations build healthier, more resilient workplaces by making wellness a core part of leadership and culture. She is the author of Making Wellness a Priority, host of the Your Wellness podcast, and a sought after speaker who has inspired thousands of professionals across industries with practical strategies for resilience, well being, and navigating change. Lisa is also passionate about breaking the stigma around menopause and supporting leaders in creating more inclusive workplaces. In 2024, Lisa completed a remarkable 350-kilometer solo pilgrimage along Spain's Camino de Santiago, an experience that deepened her understanding of resilience and now shapes the work that she shares with audiences around the world. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Kristen.
So, Lisa, you so many wonderful and interesting things on your journey, and I always like to give the audience an opportunity to first get to hear a little bit more about your story. Like, tell us more about what got you to where you are now, and I'd love to hear a little bit more around some of your athleticism too. That was new that I
Sure.
learned. I actually didn't know that. This is what I love about my guests. I get to do some research, and even people I know, I'm like, oh, I didn't know this part of your story. So, tell us more about your story.
Sure. So my story starts a long time ago when I was 6 years old. But we'll fast forward it. So at the tender age of 6, I started to love dance. So moving my body was a passion of mine. And so that passion to move my body through dance kind of followed me throughout my life. And then as I became an adult and needed to get a job, those dreams or those passions kind of just took a backseat. Then I became a mother and all the things that life throws at you. But I was always very intrigued about how I can incorporate my passion of moving my body in with my life. And how can I make that a living, actually, what I eventually turned out to do. But as a fitness instructor, so I was a dancer turned fitness instructor, I really struggled to motivate people to want to be healthy, like on a consistent basis. So if you can imagine what it looks like in the gym in January or in September, the place is packed. Everyone comes in bright-eyed, expecting the world to change for them. And then reality sits in, and a couple months later, they fall off the wagon. And I was frustrated year after year seeing this trend. And I'm like, what can I do to help people maintain their mobility and maintain their passion for being healthy? And so I created a methodology, if you want to call it, called Making Wellness a Priority. And that's where the idea of my book and my message came from. When we can make wellness our top priority, being healthy is no longer a chore. It's no longer something that happens in January or in September or when we are ill and have to recover from an illness. And so when I started leading with more of a psychological driver, I saw change in people. I saw that sustainable change and I thought, I think I'm on to something. And then that kind of motivated me to want to start a business and really help those that are stuck and can't get started or keep stopping. And when you read the methodology in my book, it's just common sense. There's science behind it, but it's making healthy less complicated. And that's what drives me to want to keep doing this because people are still struggling. And I want to be there to empower them and to not make this such a difficult journey.
Beautiful. I mean, I think all of us that we start to recognize the movement, but being able to make it an everyday part of our life and really be able to embrace it. So it's not something that you have to do or you should do. It starts to be
Hmm.
something that you don't even, of course, like why would I not want to do this? And it's so interesting being around kids too to see how movement is just such a natural part of their
Hmm.
life. Like they just all day long, that's all they do. And then of course we get into these jobs so often that are very sedentary, and of course that doesn't make us feel very good when we've been doing that all day long. So I love that that journey brought you into doing this work around wellness. So let's start by talking a little bit around, there are going to be people who are listening. We'll start more at the individual level, but we'll move eventually into more at the org level. But at the individual level, we hear this all the time, right? People want to be healthier. They want to make it a priority. And I love that your book calls it a priority. And there are these barriers. What do you
Mhm.
notice are some of those biggest barriers? You kind of alluded to some of them. It sounds like also complicating things. But how,
Mhm.
for someone listening and realizes like, yeah, I don't want this to be this every year, it's a New Year's resolution and I
Mhm.
fall off after 3 months. I want this now to be something that I really, really decide to make this commitment so that it's a long-term,
Mhm.
rest of my life kind of commitment. What are some of the things they can be thinking about?
You use the word barriers, and that's the premise of this whole concept is we can find barriers to accomplish most things, especially when it's not a priority. So if you think about something that is a natural priority for you, there's going to be barriers to accomplish that. So I'll use children as an example. If you have a child and that child needs to go to the doctor and you are busy, do you take that child to the doctor?
Mm,
Of course you do. Are you busy? Of course you are. Do you have barriers to taking the time off work or getting time enough to dedicate to your children? Of course you do. But you figure it out because that child and that child's health is such a natural priority. You don't even think about it. You just
yeah,
figure it out.
yeah,
And so when you put yourself on the same pedestal as something that has a priority like that, you'll notice that time is no longer a barrier. Lack of fitness is no longer, or lack of money, or whatever you are creating as a barrier in your mind. You're going to notice you barrel through that barrier because you've made yourself such a top priority. It's just a natural way of moving through things.
yeah.
When someone tells me they don't have enough time to exercise or time to take care of themselves, it stems from they're not there yet. They haven't made themselves a priority because it switches so easily once you do that.
Yeah, it's so funny. A couple things show up for me when you say that. I remember I've had several times with clients that exact same thing, especially when it comes to prioritizing themselves and where it comes to self-care and creating the time and space for themselves that they will always give to everybody else. And I would say to them, I'm like, I know that if you had this in your calendar that you were taking yourself even or your child to a specialist appointment, you're going
Mm,
to make that happen. Or when the calendar invite says you're meeting with the CEO, I know you're going to honor that commitment. So it was so interesting, even as we started to change and shift how they were labeling important meetings, which were actually meetings with themselves, but putting that in the calendar and calling it something that felt like a really high priority, that was them already saying out loud, like, I'm taking this as seriously as I
mhm,
would the appointment with a specialist or the appointment with the CEO. But before they weren't. It was just like they'd put it in the calendar, but they'd see the thing and they would just delete it. But it was so interesting
mhm,
because it created a mindset shift. Like when they look at that, by seeing the way they've labeled it differently, it was reminding them, no, I've now said this thing is really important to me. And so now I'm going to take it seriously and I'm not going to just delete it or ignore it
mhm,
when it's in my calendar. And for it's so interesting how much of that is a really, 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 really massive mindset shift. And I don't know if you've seen this when you're working with organizations and so many leaders that I've worked with they are they will be so good at giving advice to their people. They will be so good at saying, no, like absolutely your vacation's important. You are absolutely not checking in when you're on vacation. Um, Absolutely this thing is happening in your family. You need to take care of yourself. And yet, that advice
mhm,
they would give to everybody else around them, they would not maintain that for themselves.
mhm. I see that all the time, Kristen, all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And to emphasize the power of showing up and demonstrating. So you can say one thing, but if
Yeah.
you're not living it, you're not being authentic. And people are not going to follow you as a leader if you are not demonstrating what you are saying.
Yeah.
And that came through clearly to me when I asked my three adult children to write me love letters.
Yeah.
And those love letters I used to take with me when I walked through Spain. Those love letters highlighted a theme. So they didn't talk to each other about the letters. I didn't ask them what to write. And in the theme, they all reminded me of how I demonstrated and how I showed up to be conscious of my health, how I had self care as my top priority. They watched me eat well. They watched me take care of myself. They watched me laugh. They watched me dance. They watched me. And the legacy is not of how much I gave to them
Mhm.
and did for them. That wasn't the legacy. The legacy was they watched me demonstrate. So now, as adults, they understand the value of putting themselves first. So
Wow.
if leaders don't demonstrate what they're saying or doing, it's not authentic. It's not real. There's no proof. And so
Yeah.
I find leaders need to understand what they're saying and what they're actually living. They need to match up.
Mm-hmm. Such a beautiful example there. I love that you asked that of them with being able to share that because I think that creates such a beautiful, intimate moment. And sometimes people wait to get things like that. Well, they don't wait, they're no longer alive. And people are saying those things at their funeral instead of
Yeah.
on the day to day being able to express like the impact that you've had on them. And I think you're so right. The leading by example, and it's interesting, like everyone seems to know that at an intellectual level, right? They get
Hmm.
that.
Of
Of
course.
course, we need to be leading by example. But I like what you said there because I think anyone who might be listening where they might need that permission slip, there's something in them where they've been conditioned to believe making those sacrifices, whether that be for their kids, whether that be for their team, whether that be for their significant other, is somehow them being a supportive, loving, caring human,
Hmm.
and that they're somehow giving them what they need to give them to be, the best version of themselves. And I think the shift here, the opportunity, the invitation that both Lisa and I are giving people who are listening today is that that's not actually true. Like when you're constantly sacrificing yourself for them, and I've heard actually, I remember actually this is coming to me right now. I remember talking to my therapist a couple of years ago, and we were just talking about, relationships and when relationships end. And I was talking about how I actually don't see it as a failure at all. I think sometimes people are meant to be in your life for certain seasons.
Hmm.
And she had said, especially sometimes the concerns with parents might be, well, back in our parents' generation, it's like, well, you stay for the kids. And she was saying how, I just want to tell you from the other side, I can tell you 20-year-old, 22-year-olds, 25-year-olds who come into therapy and say, I just wish my parents had left. Like I wish they had ended the relationship. It was very clear how unhappy they were. Or I wish that my mom or my dad didn't feel like I never asked them to make all of these sacrifices that they made. So
Hmm.
again, this is coming from such good intentions, right? The
Hmm.
intentions are, well, this is what it looks like to show love. But
Hmm.
actually, you're not showing them the lesson because you're now teaching them you should sacrifice yourself. Like to
Hmm.
sacrifice yourself, that's how you show up as that person.
Exactly.
No, no. And it's not an either or either. I think that's another thing we need to be conscious of. Like it's not an either or. We're not saying, sure, make your health a priority at all expenses, like to
That's
use your
right.
doctor's appointment. Like, sorry, oh, you're over here and you're like incredibly sick. I'm about to go to the gym right now, so I don't know how that's going to happen for you. Like, of
Of
course, we're being holistic in the way that we make our
course.
decisions. We're not over indexing on either side, but I do think so many people, and I've seen it so often with my coaching and my leadership development training. It needs to be that shift for them that they just recognize because they have this belief that's not an accurate belief that it's somehow being selfish.
Hmm. Oh, and selfish is a hard, or guilty. There's selfish
Yeah,
and guilty. Those emotions pop in all the time, Kristen.
yeah,
And you're right, it does, you're not going to sacrifice one end to get the other,
yeah,
but they can live together. You can give to others. But we all know you can't give to others when you don't give to yourself. So if you can motivate yourself saying, I need to do this for myself so I can do this for those that want me to or I need to. It's a really powerful balance when you trust that it works.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So talk to me about like with all of the different people that we're eventually going to get into the menopause, but just getting more to the kind of the holistic wellness. Somebody's listening and they're saying, yeah, like this is my time. This is where I want to start to make that commitment. What are some steps that you would recommend that they can start to get
Mhm.
perhaps some clarity and to get into some of that momentum and action in more
Hmm.
of a long-term way, as opposed to some of these where it might be this short-term motivation. But because I think sometimes two people overcommit and they want to do everything all at once, and
Hmm.
then what ends up
Hmm.
happening is like this is too much, and then they do nothing at all. So where would you recommend people start?
It's $1 million question,
Yeah.
and I have the answer. So I'll just do two steps. So the first step is you have to have the mindset up. You have to have the shift. Psychologically, you need to be ready. Your commitment level has to be there before you're gonna sustain any change in your lifestyle. So that stage of commitment is really powerful. So once you've done that, you know your why, you know often I would like you to want your future, how would you like your future self to look like? Or how would I like to be an active grandmother? Do I want to be successful in my career? You kind of have to have a why,
Yes.
your future why, and you're
Yeah.
striving for that.
Yeah.
Once that is achieved, the rest is actually quite easy, but starting in micro steps instead of doing everything all at once, like you mentioned, it's called a keystone habit. So a keystone habit can be something that triggers another good habit, which
Yeah.
triggers another habit. So I recommend starting with something sustainable, something that you can start today. And then psychologically, you're going to be empowered to add to that keystone. So you're not sabotaging the good work. It could start with drinking more water, believe it or not. So if I'm drinking more water, oh, I feel more energetic. Oh, maybe I'll go for a walk because now I feel better. So you're adding the walk. Oh, maybe I should go come back and have something really nutritious because I don't want to sabotage, but I have energy and you start to crave healthy
Hmm.
lifestyle habits. So keystone habit is a psychological behavior that starts, and that's the best way to start new habits or habit stacking. Like you could read a lot
Hmm.
of books and lots of research. So those two keys is make the commitment,
Yeah.
work towards your why that's never going to change. And
Yeah.
then start with um, a sustainable habit that you can start today, and you will see the shift. It's a psychological shift. And when
Mm.
it happens, you don't even have to work at it. It
Hmm.
comes naturally if you can believe that the science is there, the research is there, the proof is there.
Yeah, I really like James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, that gave a lot of different things and just understanding habits. And one of the things that he talks about that I really appreciated that sounds like what you're saying in terms of the why is what helps to make a habit stick and stay more consistently long term is when you start to make an identity shift, right? So when I hear you saying the why, it's like I want to have the identity of the healthy grandmother who can be running
Hmm.
around. I want the identity shift of someone who, wakes up in the morning and feels energized, or wake up in the morning and feels a sense of peace because I, exercised before I went to bed, or sleep, or whatever those things are. I want to back up for a second because I think what you said there around the why is really important, because there's going to be someone who's at that very initial, like I like what you said around getting to the commitment stage, right? So they want to have the readiness. How do they get to that readiness, right? So there might be the desire is there,
Hmm.
but there's
Hmm.
a part of them that's like, well, I've always had this desire, but I want this time to be different. So I hear you saying one thing is about like getting really clear on your why. Are there other things that you might suggest to get them even to that readiness for commitment?
So there are some options, but the one it goes back to barriers. It goes back to finding excuses. It goes back to old habits. It goes back to priority, and it goes back to those things. So as soon as this is all a mind shift. This is all about shifting the mind. And
Yeah.
so I want them to catch themselves thinking or saying, I can't because.
Mm,
I want you to catch yourself every single time. I can't because, what is it? I can't do that because today because. And then write that because down, stop
mm-hmm,
and think about it and going, why am I using
mm,
that as an excuse? And
mm-hmm.
instead of identifying the barrier and then find a solution. That's what my book is all about. Noticing the barrier you are creating in your mind and then
Yeah.
find a solution around it. And the more often you do it, the more often you're going to catch yourself, the more often you're going to solve that barrier. You're going to push that barrier aside. And it's the hardest thing is creating momentum. It's like a tire. It's like pushing a tire. You got to push, but once the tire starts to move, it starts to develop momentum. So it's the
Yeah.
first hardest step, Kristen.
Yeah.
And it comes with the mind shift. And you have to put in the work. This is not easy, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to want it so bad that you are
Mm-hmm.
willing to
Mm-hmm.
change your mind, change the
Mm-hmm.
mind shift.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's gonna be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we both want to have everyone to be successful. I have people I've been working with for years who still are struggling.
Yeah.
And some folks just haven't gotten there yet. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what's their barrier. How come they aren't able to sustain it? Why do they keep falling back to those old
Right.
habits?
Right.
Some people are just harder to switch than others, but it's possible, is
Yeah.
what we have to keep the hope alive that it is possible for
Right.
everybody.
And it could just be at that moment, like the next time might be that time that it sticks, like to be able to.
Exactly.
And I do want anyone who's listening too, I just want to acknowledge as someone who's, had a healthy lifestyle for, over 20 years as well. There's still going to be, you don't get to this place that sometimes you don't feel like going to the gym. Like, I just want to acknowledge there are
Mm,
times where I just say to myself, I really don't feel like going today. And
hmm
then I will
hmm
catch myself in that. And sometimes I just don't make it to the gym, and that's okay. I'm a human and I'm not
hmm
going to bash myself around that. But I also recognize tomorrow's a new day and then I can go back tomorrow. I'm not going to all of a sudden say, oh, well, since I didn't go yesterday, there's just no point in going any time ever again, because sometimes we can get into very binary thinking and very black and white thinking. So I want to acknowledge as someone who has done this for a long time, there's also times where you might reach a plateau and you start to get bored with what you've been doing for so long and you need to shake things
hmm
up and you need
hmm
to get creative. And sometimes you start to notice new things that you didn't even know exist. Like I have friends and clients who all of a sudden found pickleball, and that's been such a fun form of exercise because they're also getting community in it. Or they start to
hmm
realize that it's more fun when they do it with their partner, or they get to have an accountability buddy. And so I also want to acknowledge that as we evolve, that version of how we might want to exercise or get healthy or getting our movement in might also shift as well. And even just depending on your age, right? As going through it, when we'll talk a little bit more about menopause, if you're at a certain stage, it's going to make perhaps more sense to go and do weights where previously maybe you didn't do weights. So I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, well, there's something wrong with me because I don't want to go sometimes, or I don't feel
hmm
like getting movement in sometimes. And
hmm
that is part of it, but it's just noticing that, being the observer of that part who's making the different excuses, and then noticing, okay, is there a different way that I want to relate to myself in this moment? Is there something that I might need to support myself in being able to make this happen? Is there someone I might need to ask help for in this moment so
hmm
that I have the opportunity? So I just want to also acknowledge that no matter what, even if you've been having a healthy lifestyle forever, there are still hard moments
Of
in
course.
maintaining it.
And you've had some really good points in there, and I want to highlight that it's okay to not want to go to the gym. It's okay. And I have those moments when I don't feel like moving my body either. But it's also a signal or a symptom of something else that's declining. Why, again, ask ourselves, why do I not feel like going to the gym? I'm not being hard on myself. I'm not punishing myself. I'm being curious. Oh, it's because I haven't slept good for 3 days. Okay, so I'm going to give myself some grace.
Yeah,
Or, oh, you know what? I haven't been eating well. Or I have this deadline. We will find the reason when
yeah,
we dig deep, but we have to do it with compassion. We can't beat ourselves up saying, okay, I realize why I'm tired, and that's okay. My body's telling me rest, rest, it's okay. We have to take that burden of guilt and self-deprecation that this is wrong.
yeah, yeah,
Because when we love ourselves so much, we can give ourselves permission to rest. But then we also love ourselves so much that we make ourselves a priority. They
yes.
can live in the same place.
Exactly, exactly. We don't want this to be about shame and, oh, we're going to shame
Mm-mm.
ourselves into doing things. That's not, that doesn't serve in any way. Okay, let's move to the hot topic these days around menopause. I say hot topic because I think it's so beautiful and a really really wonderful shift that's happening. That there's so much more dialogue and conversation and openness around this subject, and I feel for many women before us who did not have the space or openness that this was being discussed. And a lot of times women felt very alone, like they were the
Mhm.
only ones going through this. Because there was some stigma around discussing it, and people just kept it to themselves. And so I know there's going to be many women who are listening who will be very interested to hear a little bit more around, as there's been more research and science and hopefully funding that continues to be put in this area that wasn't for so many years. What are the things that you would like to share with women who are perhaps in perimenopause, they are currently in menopause, or in the other stage of menopause, from a well-being perspective?
Oh, goodness, you're opening up Pandora's
Yeah.
box. We need to talk about this. So I'll to make it to summarize, so we're not talking about this for hours, which I'd love to, is there's a stigma still around aging and menopause. And as women, we need to get over that. Menopause is a natural transition, just like puberty, childbearing years. It's just the next transition. And I want women to be empowered and to thrive. And I'm saying this because I'm on the other side of it. I didn't understand menopause. Even as a wellness coach, my body I didn't follow the protocol. And when I actually started to experience menopause symptoms, I was insulted with my body. I'm like, what? But I
Mhm.
eat healthy and I do
Mhm.
yoga. You can't, you can't change this transition. You can't skip it. So it's something we all need to be empowered. We know this is going to happen. So the more education we have, um, we will be better prepared. I wasn't prepared, and that's why I became a menopause coach. And so such a large advocate and a huge advocate because I wasn't even prepared. And then I started reaching out to other women, and
Yeah,
nobody seems to have been prepared
right.
because of the stigma. The root of the issue is the stigma is we are aging. Women are not allowed to age. We
Mhm.
haven't been given permission to
Mhm.
have wrinkles, to have gray hair, to stiffen up, to lose um, lubrication in our skin and in our even in our vaginas. Like there's so many things that we have been taught to not talk about. And so
Yeah,
women have been suffering in silence, and this is ending now.
yeah.
Our generation, Kristen, we are done hiding this
Hmm.
beautiful natural transition.
Yeah.
And so the end message of the stigma is this is the woman's time to thrive. This is
Yeah.
actually the best time of our lives because we have confidence. We've been through stuff. We know stuff. We don't care about lots of other stuff. Like this is powerful. And we have to get women to that mindset that this is an awesome time of our lives, even when we think it's the worst time.
Yeah. And what completely agree with you. I could go off on a whole other tangent around capitalism and how it is designed so often with everyone making women feel like we're not enough and all of the things
Mm.
we should be doing in terms of, it's just going at all these different angles. And of course, as we move into this one, into that stage, there's so many different advertisers and marketers that are making women feel around all these things around being
Mm.
lesser than. And I'm curious around for a woman listening, how they can be taking themselves physiologically when it comes to this. There's the mental piece, right?
Mm.
Recognizing like, yeah, like this is to be celebrated. This is a stage where that everyone goes through. And I also think that being able to ask questions in community so that you don't feel alone. What should people be aware of taking care of themselves from a physiological perspective?
So this is a huge part of self-advocacy. Women have to take charge of their health because obviously no one else will. So we have to take control and we have to advocate. We have to educate ourselves, learn, talk to other women. And if you are not getting the answers from your healthcare practitioner, you
Yeah,
need to move on to someone who will.
yeah,
Unfortunately or fortunately, going through menopause does require healthcare. we need healthcare. We need hormone replacement therapy, or we need access to blood work or supplements. There are things that we need support with. And if you're not getting that, if you're feeling like you're being gaslit or there's nobody out there, they are there. You just have to search for them. Online, there's lots of nurse practitioners that are supporting hormone expertise. And I don't want women or even men to think that they have to give up or that this is the best
Yeah.
they're ever going to feel again because women deserve more. Men deserve to have healthy women in their lives, but
Yeah.
it does take a team, and those folks are out there. So if you have a doctor or you don't have a doctor and you're not getting what you need, they're out there. You just have to look or
Yeah.
reach out to the Menopause Foundation of Canada, reach out to people that you know are experts in the field, and we can help direct you to that care because
Yeah.
that's when the journey is going to start to get better.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important. And I've had many friends who have been in that situation where, and actually, in every situation, it was a female doctor, ironically, that was not giving them the support that they needed. And they
Hmm.
just thought, oh, this is the way it is. And they were doing a lot of the advocacy for themselves. And ultimately, those doctors were just not able to support them in the way they needed to be supported. So they had to look for other resources. And it was life-changing. Once they had somebody else who actually understood, who had done their own educating themselves, because
Hmm.
not all doctors, you have to specialize a little bit more to be able to understand this particular, all of these different ways that they could be, because there's also not a one size fits all.
That's right.
Every woman's going to look a little bit different. And what are some things to just also let women know so that they don't feel like there's something wrong with them? I remember some different friends where they realized, oh, this is why I'm having so much brain fog. And it made them feel so much better because they're like, I just don't, why I keep forgetting things. What are some of those symptoms that can come along with it? Just so that maybe someone will hear this today and realize,
Hmm.
oh, not only just in menopause, but the perimenopause, which could be happening 5 to 10 years before that, right? Some of those signs or things that could be happening where maybe they need to be getting support.
So hot flashes is the poster child for menopause.
Yeah,
We all know that, right?
yeah,
And when they come, you know you're having a hot flash.
right.
You know it's the only symptom that is related to menopause. Some medications can create hot flashes, but typically menopause is the main driver.
Yeah,
Outside of that, it could get very confusing.
yeah,
It's muddled in a lot of other challenges or other illnesses. It could be a symptom of a lot of things, but quite often it's a symptom of perimenopause.
yeah,
Brain fog is probably the most common concern for women in my practice. They don't come to me because they're gaining weight or they're having hot flashes. They come to me because they're scared about the brain fog or the cognitive decline. And estrogen is responsible for every cell of our body, which includes our cognitive health.
yeah.
So it's a journey, but it doesn't mean you're broken or you're developing Alzheimer's. There could be risks there,
Hmm.
but the more you know, the more you can be prepared. And so I experience brain fog quite often and I lose my words. And I've just learned to own it. I'm 58 and I'm just learning to just own it
Hmm.
because I know it's normal. I
Hmm.
know it's something I am aware of. I have strategies to support it. And I also know there isn't a magic pill to get rid of something like brain fog. You can improve it, but unfortunately, it's gonna be there. It's gonna be lingering. So we're gonna have to learn how to live with it. So I'm just owning up to it. So when I can't think of a word or I've lost my memory, I'm like, can't think of that word. And I don't care. If you don't
Yeah,
want to help me find that word,
yeah,
I'll be here waiting. Wait for me
right.
while I think of the word. Or fill in the blank for me. I'm
Yeah,
okay with that.
yeah,
But when it first started to happening, I was
yeah,
afraid to admit it. And I speak for a living. And I'm
yeah,
like, what happens if I lose my train of thought? Like, so I found ways to cover it up,
yeah.
usually with a joke or a laugh or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now I realize we just need to own it up. And I know
Hmm.
there's going to be women in the audience or women listening going, oh,
Yeah,
I want to give you permission
yeah,
to
yeah,
have that because we're all doing it. We're just not talking about it.
Exactly.
And the same with every other gazillion symptom of menopause. Many of us are experiencing it. We're just not talking about it. So let's talk about it. Let's be okay. Let's bring a sisterhood together, even bring in the men in our lives. Let them know
Exactly.
I am not losing any intelligence here. My IQ is not declining.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a transition, and this is one of the impacts for me. Finish my sentence for me if you want. Like you have to find out what's your strategy going to be.
Yeah, I think that's so good what you said there. I'm such a believer, as you know, around community and creating that supportive environment where we're all just sharing so that we feel less alone. And I've actually seen a lot of women sharing with men and them being very helpful resources in that way. Like they've actually said, like a woman might be saying something like, oh, actually, my wife had been saying how this thing, she tried this, right? So men can be really good at being able to be supportive, not just for their significant others, but the community, right? So, you
Hmm.
also, men also have sisters and cousins and colleagues and friends and all of that that are going through these experiences. And I'm always such a big believer that men are allies in all of this. I
Yes.
find in some of these discussions, it's so much like, oh, men don't know what it's like and all of the, and I explain a lot to people around feminism. Feminism isn't about making it men against women. It's actually men and
Yeah,
women working very effectively together
exactly.
around an allyship. Okay, let's shift over to the org. From an organizational perspective, there's going to be some CEOs, leaders, executives, HR leaders listening right now, and they're saying, yes, all of this stuff's very important. How can we as an organization be more conscious around supporting well-being? In some of those different avenues might look like women going through menopause. What would you suggest to them? What would you like to see more of? So I'm going to give you a magic wand and
Hmm.
you get to use that magic wand. What do you want to see more of happening in organizations?
It goes back to making it a priority.
Mm-hmm.
The business case for healthy employees is clear. 10 years ago, when I started working with actually 15 years working in corporations, there wasn't a lot of data. There wasn't a lot of proof.
Yeah,
Business case, money, what's the bottom line? How is this going to impact me? Why should I care about my employees' health? Well,
yeah,
the business case is there, the proof is there. COVID has really heightened that for us as well.
yeah.
So organizations need to understand that it is partly their responsibility, not completely, but
Yeah.
partly their responsibility to encourage a healthy culture. And they
Mm-hmm.
can have a huge impact, which is going to bring back the best return on investment when it comes to productivity and low turnover of their people. So companies need to take a wider view of the value of investing in their employees' health.
Mm-hmm.
When budgets tighten, guess what goes first?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Employee wellness. Because
Yeah.
they're being short-sightedness. They're not seeing the long-term value of having people healthy. They're not leaving the company. They're staying. They're being productive. They're happy. They're healthy. Everything improves. But the budget says something different and we panic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I can't spend money on my employees because I need to do something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest hurdle, biggest barrier. But once that shifts again, they're
Mm-hmm.
going to see a better return on their investment over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when you think about organizations that are investing and prioritizing, what are some of the things that you're seeing in organizations that are doing this well? Where are they
Uh,
investing?
so they're allowing their staff to be healthy,
Mm-hmm.
giving them permission to be healthy. And it sounds
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous, but when I used to work in the corporate world, I used to take time to go for walks, take breaks, take my lunch hour. I kept getting reprimanded for that. Like, how is that productive? I used to get in trouble for
Yeah.
taking breaks, taking
Right.
walks.
Right.
Well, okay, I'll sit at my desk and just stare at the computer and not do anything if that's what you want.
Yeah.
So when employers start to give their employees permission to be healthy, permission to step away from their desk, permission to have healthy food in the fridge, or when they say, I support your 2 weeks holidays, let them have those 2 weeks holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Staff barbecues aren't sustainable. They're a
Mm-hmm.
band-aid solution. Retreats
Mm-hmm.
even can
Yeah.
be a band-aid solution.
Yeah.
It has to be consistent year-round demonstration that I care about your health and I'm going to follow through by allowing you to take those breaks, allowing you to have healthy snacks in the lunchroom. It's not complicated again.
Mm.
The
Mm-hmm.
culture has to stay positive, allowing employees to laugh. I used to get in trouble for laughing in the office.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Having really rich conversations in the lunchroom about menopause. Like, there's so many easy steps a company can take to improve the culture that they will see the staff giving back. Staff will
Mm-hmm.
give back when
Mm-hmm.
they feel respected and heard and cared
Mm-hmm.
for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I talk a lot about it's interesting. I almost hear a lot of my work around emotional intelligence and conscious leadership is creating an environment where leaders are living and breathing those values. And of course, the
Hmm.
behaviors that are associated with those values in the environment that goes around. What I hear you saying is if we have organizations that have those conscious, well-rounded, emotionally intelligent leaders, they're going to naturally create a space that supports every individual in doing what they need to do, their version of staying healthy. It was funny when you were talking, I've been around organizations that were like that as well and were punitive when you were doing things such as going for walks. Ironically, it was okay for the smokers to go for a 15-minute smoke break,
Right.
which is actually not helping your health, but the ones who are doing something that is encouraging a more healthy lifestyle. So I hear it being almost to the discretion of the leaders who have people reporting into them. They are creating environments that supports if they want to be going for walks, if they are taking their vacations, if they do need to take some time off of work for appointments or things to
Hmm.
deal with support around menopause. That is making them have their wellness prioritized. I've seen organizations when they've done a lot of things around they might have tools when it comes to mental health. They might have sessions that talk about mental health, and they might have access to yoga. They might be reimbursing gym memberships
Hmm.
or things
Hmm.
like that, which I do think there's value in that because you're now saying we care about this, like the dollars, the money, you're showing where you're investing the money. You're literally saying, yes, we will support that in providing reimbursement for that. So I do think that's setting a signal as well. But I like what you said as well. You said they have a part in being responsible for the well-being because ultimately they can create an environment that encourages it, but on the individual level, that person also needs to take
Hmm.
responsibility that they're the other thing that I want to address and name, because I know there's going to be people listening right now that are going to express this, where organizations will say, oh, yes, we really promote everybody going on vacations. And yet, the organization is, and individuals in the organization are so under-resourced
Hmm.
that person doesn't even want to go on vacation because the stress of being off for a week or 2 weeks and what they're going to come back to.
Hmm.
Because sometimes I hear people say, oh, no, it's just fine. It's fine. You just unplug and do nothing. But it's actually not realistic. And I think it's unfair for those individuals where they're hearing that because they're like, that's not very realistic for me. Because when I leave and come back, now I have backlog, 2 weeks of work on top of my
Hmm.
current everyday. So it's not worth it for me to be able to. So I also want to zoom out for a second, going back to what you said around the culture. The culture has to support the individual going on vacation. You don't just say we support you going on vacation, but there aren't resources so that that person comes back and they have a backlog of 2 weeks. That's not giving them the opportunity to really go and rest because then nothing has happened while they were gone, right? I think we
Yeah.
have to be very conscious. And I just want to intentionally name that because I know that's a real barrier for many people and organizations where they are cutting costs to such a detriment to the individuals.
And they're also encouraging folks to answer their emails when they're on
Hmm.
vacation. And I run into a
Hmm.
lot of people going, well, I might as well answer them now so that I don't have a backlog when I get back.
Yeah,
So they're diluting their time away.
right.
It's a cyclical issue we
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
address.
Yes, yes. I think this is such a really, really important conversation, Lisa, and I'll definitely make sure to include more in the show notes so people can learn more. I'm assuming you probably maybe have some resources on some of these topics on your website, and people can check out your podcast as well. I want to give you an opportunity to leave a final thought, whatever is with you and feels most front and center as a final thought for today's conversation.
It's always the same thing, Kristen. We need to give ourselves permission to make
Mhm.
ourselves a priority. Nothing
Mhm.
else matters.
Mm.
Nothing else matters. I thought maybe my methodology or my tagline or my book would run out of steam or not be valid anymore, but it's
Mm.
never going to change. It never changes. This is the foundation of how we are going to have sustainable, healthy lifestyles. I'm about to be a grandmother in a couple months. I can't wait to be that active grandmother. I'm visualizing
Yeah.
playing with that child, being
Yeah.
able to run next to her and sit on the floor and build things and take her swimming. I am visualizing. And my son, who's going to be the new father, is looking forward to watching that as well. He's already told me he
Yeah.
can't wait to see me as a grandmother and being active and loving and available
Yeah.
emotionally. So nothing else is going to come to fruition
Yeah.
until you make yourself a priority.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're so welcome.
Where can people learn more about you and the work that you're doing?
I'm everywhere. So my company is called New Day Wellness. So you just
Mhm.
type in newdaywellness.ca. You'll find me there. I'm the wellness lady on Instagram, Lisa Lounsbury. You'll find me. I'm
Nice.
everywhere.
Nice. We'll also include that in the show notes. And for everyone who's listened today and this episode has resonated with you, make sure to share this with others. Let them know about the podcast. And for anyone who is interested in learning more about working with me, you can learn more at kristenharcourt.com. I do a lot of executive coaching, one-on-one coaching, leadership development training, and transformative keynotes on conscious leadership, emotionally intelligent leadership, and human workplaces. Wherever you are in the world and you're tuning in today, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, sending tons of love. Bye bye.